Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Gigi. I'm the internal journalist at Absalon, and today I'm joined by Richard, who is our Shiny developer and staff engineer. And today we'll be discussing two awesome books, Think Again by Adam Grant and Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Okay, so Richard, could you please introduce yourself, please?
Hi everybody. So as Gigi mentioned, I'm Ryszard Szymański. I'm an Shiny developer and staff engineer at Epsilon. My background is in computer science, and I've been working at Epsilon for over 2.5 years already. Outside of work, I'm interested in different kinds of sports and books, which we'll be discussing today. But when it comes to sports, currently it's basketball and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I also enjoy to bake from time to time. So
That's so
that's
cool.
me.
Great. Thank you so much. So, first things first, before we get started delving into the two books, which I coincidentally have. So, in general, what books do you like to read, and do you have a favorite genre?
I don't think I have a favorite genre. Recently, because it's January 2024, I looked at my Goodreads summary for 2023, and you can find all sorts of stuff there, like
I saw.
both fiction and nonfiction. And in fiction, you can find both fantasy books and classic literature. But I do read more of nonfiction, and in there, I read reportages, biographies, also tech-related books or business-related books, as well as some related to psychology, like the two that we'll be discussing today. So I'd call myself more of a genre explorer than a particular genre enthusiast.
Okay, that sounds great. I also like exploring different genres, get the best of everything. All right, so can you share what inspired you to pick up these two particular titles? Because I think they discuss similar topics. So, why did you read them?
Sure. So Thinking Fast and Slow was recommended to me during a course on Scrum that I took some time ago. And the person that was recommending it said that, told the group that you have no idea how much cognitive biases you might have. And that sort of sparked my interest in the topic. In terms of Think Again, I saw some of Adam Grant's posts on LinkedIn, and I liked them. And I saw that he published a book. And also my fiance got recommendations about his previous books. So I thought I'll give it a read. So those were the two main inspirations.
Okay, that makes sense. And Thinking Fast and Slow is very, very popular. Okay, so next question is, without giving any spoilers, can you briefly summarize the two books you read? What were your key takeaways from these two books?
Sure. So if the way I would describe Think Again is that it talks about the benefits of rethinking things, like values, ideas, solutions. And for example, one of the benefits is that it can help generate new and innovative ideas. And it discusses how to apply rethinking not only on the individual level, but also how to apply it within a group or even within a larger community. When it comes to it's difficult to discuss takeaways without spoiling it.
Yeah.
But if I were to point to, let's say, the one biggest takeaway I had from there, we can dive into this a bit later on, but it sort of encouraged me to not take everything as is, but actually rethink it and think about why do we want to do something, or why is it good to do something. And for Thinking Fast and Slow, the way I would summarize it is it describes two modes of thought. Like it defines like system 1 and system 2, where system 1 is like this system that is fast and instinctive, while system 2 is the one that's slower and more logical. And the book like goes through how those systems interact with each other. And this sort of leads to like chapters about how our mind works and how this can cause some cognitive biases. And my main takeaways are, what are some of possible cognitive biases? And like, I don't know, my favorite one is the anchoring bias, about how you first, like, how you can first hear a number and that kind of anchors your answers to other questions, like to the point, like when you hear the number 20 and you get asked, how much does a great whale weigh? This will impact your guess, which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a whole lot of sense. Now I'm very, very convinced to finish reading the book. Okay. So my next question for you is, did these books, did they offer any strategies or techniques for improving the way you think or your problem solving skills personally as a developer, that kind of thing?
So what I would say, it's not necessarily only about strategies and techniques, but even being aware of cognitive biases or modes of thinking I might be unawarely using. But in terms of, but there are some strategies that I took away from those books. Like, for example, in Think Again, there was a whole like the discussion on how to encourage others to reevaluate their opinions. And for example, the author there mentions like trying to find common ground. Like the thing that the way I try to apply it as a software engineer is like, for example, if we're discussing how you want to implement something, like a good common ground is, hey, we're trying to solve the same problem, but in different ways. Another suggestion they gave in the book was using less arguments. Like that's something I think I did in the past, like sort of I focus how many arguments I can come up with to justify my idea. But it turned out in the research that is mentioned over there that it's better to focus on key, most important ones instead of like throwing a bunch of arguments. And also asking more questions. Like the question that I really liked was, what would convince you to change your mind? And this sort of like encourages the other person, like, hey, what would need to happen for me to like reevaluate my opinion? And another part of asking more questions is that there's this tip I would get in the past, especially like during childhood, is like put yourself in somebody else's shoes, which turns out to be bad advice because we might simplify someone's situation because we don't know it that well. And sort of in the book, we're encouraged to like ask questions to learn more about this situation instead of using the put yourself in somebody's shoes advice.
That makes sense.
And in Think Again, like there's one strategy or technique I took away. Like there was a part there that talked about hiring. Like maybe like the author had to like come up with a way to hire people. Like I won't spoil to what kind of jobs, and sort of like the situation the author like met when he started working on it was that there were 20-minute interviews, and the person who was interviewing candidates like would just decide if we want to hire this person or not, only on their overall impression. And the author of the book suggested like looked for a different strategy of doing that that's more like objective and not like based on, I would call it, gut feeling. And he even gave like a framework of specific steps that you can follow to like create your own hiring strategy. Like think about traits that are measurable that you're looking for in candidates. Like define questions that verify those traits and write them. Like, I don't know, you can think of a trait like you want people who are who display like high level of ownership, and you can come up with questions that verify that and rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. And then based on the results, we like have an objective score of how well that particular candidate fits your criteria.
That's so cool. Okay, thank you so much. So another question I have is, were there any surprising or unexpected connections you made between the content of these books? Because they both talk about thinking. So are there like any like very close similarities?
I would say that like that they are similar, but like they look at it from a different angle. The way I sort of saw thinking again is more like I don't think like theory and practical examples is a good way to distinguish them, because like thinking fast and slow also gives practical examples. But
Okay.
I think again like focused more on that, like compared to thinking fast and slow. But in terms of connections, I'd say that like both of them recommend us to think deeply about things, like not necessarily just trust our own initial judgments.
Okay.
But like thinking and encourages rethinking, while thinking fast and slow, and thinking again like promotes this thinking mode of a scientist that constantly look for the truth. And at the same time, I felt like thinking fast and slow was encouraging us to look like for objective facts, which like to me sounds like, hey, this is what a scientist does, because he comes up with experiments and looks for like objective facts, but based on the measurements in their experiments. So that's like the main connection I found in the books.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. And then another question, because I noticed like several books make reference to thinking fast and slow. So for someone who maybe doesn't want to start, or they just finished reading Thinking Fast and Slow or Think Again, are there any books related to these topics that you'd recommend as a good follow-up?
Those are actually the only two books I read connected to psychology.
Okay.
So like if you read one, I think reading the other can be a good, like I found that they complement each other pretty well. But
Yeah.
that like, they sort of talk about similar things, but it's like you still like I felt like I gained more of another perspective by reading another book. It's not like I read the same thing. But, maybe one book that like I made a connection between Think Again and nonviolent communication, like especially on this part on how to ask questions to encourage people to reevaluate opinions. Like I felt that like I think they mentioned there that good negotiators often like make sure they understood something correctly, so they phrase how they understood something and ask if that's the right way to understand it. And this really reminded me of nonviolent communication. So maybe giving nonviolent communication a go could be like a good follow-up, maybe like not necessarily directly connected, but a bit to the side.
Okay. I think that's a book that I would like to check out as well. But for me, my recommendation will be this one. Don't know if you can see it. Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. I think some of the concept discussed, I think in Thinking Fast and Slow, it's mentioned slightly in that book as well. So it was nice. Okay. Next question is, we've already covered like similarities in concepts. Okay. Next question is, have you implemented any changes or strategies in your work life or personal life after reading these two books? Can you share some examples?
Sure. So I'd say that in my work life, I'm an interviewer at our company. So because I learned about cognitive biases and how like I have system one, which is super fast, like I try to differentiate between the part where I interview someone and when I evaluate someone. Like I treat the interview as like a process of gathering information. Like I know some people are able to sort of tell during the interview how did it go. I'm not such a person. Like I always look carefully at my notes and try to like objectively evaluate. So it's sort of like during the interview, I'm part of that conversation. So I'm like not necessarily objective, but after I evaluate, I like, there's Ryszard after the interview who's looking at that conversation and sort of tries to like take away insights from that conversation and evaluate the person. And also during our interview process, we ask people to fill in a self-assessment survey where they rate themselves in particular skills from 0 to 3 stars. And here I try to be mindful of the anchoring effect. Like if someone gives themselves 3 stars, like does it sort of put a grain in my mind that, hey, I should rate someone higher? Or if someone like is less confident in their abilities and puts themselves 1 star, does it like anchor things down? So that's some things I try to be mindful of. Also, another thing is I try to be reasonably reserved when in our industry we hear about the next big thing that will revolutionize how we work. I think it's easy to jump to quick conclusions, and I try to remain reasonably skeptic but optimistic. So if we hear that, hey, this next thing will boost your will 10x your productivity, I'd like to see like examples or studies conducted showing that it indeed has such an impact. And also from Thinking Fast and Slow, I learned about the regression to the mean phenomenon. Like, do you recall the situation where people say that when you tell someone they did well, they will do worse, but
Yeah.
when they did badly and you give them feedback they did badly, they will do better? And they sort of assume that you shouldn't praise, but you should punish because of that.
Mhm.
And turns out it's just, like variance. And someone can have perform on an average level, and they have like a worse day where they did really bad. But because like it's just like an outlier, they go back to the mean, so they do better next time. And the same way they can have their average performance, and one day they have a really good day where they do very well. And when you praise them like next time, like they do how they do on average, then you like sort of interpret that as doing worse. So just being able of just being aware of this also helps me when doing performance reviews, because like I avoid grading someone or giving someone a bad feedback because they had one bad day. But I also avoid like overly praising someone because they had one good day. Like what matters is like the average performance that person showed during the review cycle. I'm thinking of other things. I think I also try to be more mindful of how I phrase my views. Like,
Okay.
I really avoid saying that something is like, I avoid saying things like, it's obvious that we should do activity A. Like, or saying that, hey, it's super intuitive, like it makes sense. But instead I try to like phrase it differently, like based on the source, there are teams who notice improvements after doing activity A. Why don't we give it a go? Like, I believe the latter version gives, like, shows that, hey, it's just an hypothesis, and sort of encourages like others to challenge the source of that idea. And like sort of also puts me in a position that, hey, I'm a scientist who wants to check if this will work, not like I'm a person who exactly knows how it will work, and everybody who like questions it is like in opposite to me. And this also like impacts how I do code reviews. Like, I'm not a big fan of saying that, hey, you're not following best practices, because like you rob that other person from learning why this is a good a best practice or a recommended practice. Instead, like I explain like why I believe it's useful in that particular context. Because also sometimes, even though we have best practices, you have like edge cases where it doesn't necessarily apply. So I sort of feel like mindfully communicating that leads to better like situation where everybody learns, and we actually come up with the best solution for that particular case.
Okay, awesome. We're done discussing the two books. So you've been reading a lot of books recently. Is there any book that you think everyone should read?
Like, maybe I would rephrase the question, because like I feel like everyone's at different like stage, has different experiences. So like what I'm sharing is more like the books that I felt like influenced me the most.
Mhm.
And like there are 3 books that came to mind. One is like more work oriented, is like Outcomes Over Outputs. It's also super short, so there's a high ROI of reading that book. Like it's sort of like, as a software engineer, it encouraged me to like think about like the impact I want to have with the software that I write, and what behavior and human change I'm looking for, instead of focusing, oh, I'm just shipping feature A and feature B. I also really liked 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but it might be also a nostalgic recommendation because this was like the first nonfiction book that I've read. And one recent one is 4,000 Weeks Time Management for Mortals. Like, the thing that I really liked about it is it tackles productivity from a different angle. Like, I feel like there are a lot of books which describe that how can you fit more in less time, while this book is like, hey, just accept the fact you won't be able to do everything, and instead of like optimizing how much you can do in a given amount of time, look at other things. And like one of them is like prioritizing stuff, so focus on the things that are most important to you, and the other is like, sometimes more productivity doesn't mean it's better. And I like the example of making coffee. Like, do you prefer to like get instant coffee in 2 minutes instead of grinding the beans by yourself and brewing it yourself? And I actually use a dripper, so it like takes me 5 or 6 minutes to take a cup of coffee, but I just really enjoy that process. And if I were to focus solely on productivity, so like getting coffee in the smallest amount of time, like I rob myself from the joy I get from this longer, maybe inefficient process, because I also grind my beans like manually. I don't have like an electric grinder. So that's one I would really recommend.
Okay, awesome. Awesome recommendations. Thank you. And then, final question. what book would you recommend that would be helpful to developers?
I would say the outcomes over outputs one. Like it's super short, but you can get like a general idea of how you can, like what to focus on when building your software. And this sort of like, I heard about this concept of like having a nose for impact, and it's like, I felt like it really helped in my career to sort of discuss like, is this feature even worth doing? Because like, what do we expect out of it, or how can we like let's say we have an idea for a feature and we think it can have that particular outcome. Is there a different way or a different, easier way to achieve that outcome doing something differently? And I felt like those were a bit of a trampoline to my career in some way.
Thank you so much. All right, so that wraps it. That wraps up everything. Thank you so much, Ryszard, for sharing your insights about these two great books. And do you have any final things you'd like to tell our audience?
So yeah, I encourage to look at the two books. I think I forgot to mention it, but they even impacted me in terms of my private life. Like I'm getting married in April, and
Yay!
like the tradition in Poland is like you have this wedding party that you organize, and also the tradition is you have a bachelor party, and sort of those books encourage me to like think about, am I doing this just because everybody does it, or is it because it's something I want to do? And yeah, ultimately, I'm probably doing both. But like I feel like in the past, sometimes I would do something just because everybody does that. So I think thanks to those books, I will avoid that. And yeah, I encourage you to check out other books and other videos on our YouTube channel.
All right, you've heard our audience. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. If you'd like to learn more about us and our content, you can check our YouTube channel and also our blog. And we'll see you in our next video. Thank you. Bye.